The galaxy had seen many species rise and fall across millions of years, but none had confused the elder races quite like humanity when humans first ventured beyond their small blue world. The Galactic Concord watched with mild curiosity and great suspicion. Here was a species born from a death world, forged through countless wars, and carrying within their blood the memory of violence that would make most civilizations tremble in fear. The elder races expected conquest. They expected humanity to bare its teeth and claim territory with fire and fury, because that was what their history suggested they would do. But humanity surprised everyone. Instead of warships, they sent diplomats. Instead of demands, they brought gifts. Instead of conquest, they offered friendship and trade and the promise of peaceful cooperation. 200 years passed, and humanity became known throughout the galaxy not as warriors, but as builders and healers and teachers. They established medical stations on dying worlds and asked for nothing in return. They shared technology freely and never demanded tribute. They settled disputes between ancient enemies with patience and wisdom that seemed impossible for such a young species ambassador. Elena Vasquez had spent 30 years representing humanity on the Galactic Concord Council, and in all that time she had never once raised her voice in anger or issued a threat. She was known for her calm demeanor, her endless patience, and her genuine belief that every conflict could be resolved through understanding. The other species did not know what to make of her or her kind. They are strange creatures, the Valori delegate would often say to his colleagues, his four eyes blinking in confusion. Their history speaks of world wars and nuclear weapons and violence beyond imagination. Yet they sit here and smile and talk of peace as if they have forgotten everything they once were. Perhaps they are simply weak. The Crethian ambassador would respond with a dismissive wave of her clawed hand. Perhaps all those stories of human ferocity are nothing but myths designed to make them seem more impressive than they truly are. This belief spread throughout the galaxy like a slow poison. Humanity's kindness became evidence of cowardice in the eyes of those who respected only strength. Their patience became proof of weakness. Their reluctance to use force became a sign that they had no force to use. The Vraxith Dominion was the first to test this theory. The Vraxith were an ancient warrior species who had built their empire on conquest and blood. They respected power and despised those who would not wield it. When they looked at humanity, they saw prey pretending to be predators. Their raids began small at first. A cargo ship attacked here. A mining outpost struck there. They killed humans and took their resources and waited to see what would happen. Humanity responded with formal complaints to the Galactic Concord ambassador. Vasquez stood before the council and presented evidence of the attacks. She showed images of destroyed ships and dead colonists. She asked for justice and received nothing but empty words and dismissive gestures. These are frontier matters, the council chair declared with obvious boredom. Such skirmishes are beneath the concern of this body, and we suggest that humanity handle its border disputes on its own. The Vraxith watched this response with growing confidence. They had killed humans and faced no consequences. Clearly, the stories of human fury were nothing but fairy tales. They increased their raids. More ships were attacked. More colonies were struck. More humans died, and still humanity did not strike back. They increased their border patrols. They strengthened their defenses. They evacuated vulnerable populations. But they did not send their warships into Vraxith space. They did not bomb Vraxith worlds. They did not respond with the violence that their history said they were capable of. You see? Warlord Kethrak laughed as he reviewed the reports of his latest successful raid. The humans are nothing but soft creatures playing at civilization. They have forgotten how to fight, and they tremble at the thought of real war. His subordinates agreed eagerly. The humans were weak. The humans were afraid. The humans would never fight back across the galaxy. Other species whispered similar thoughts. The mighty humans of legend were apparently nothing but a myth. The species that had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars was now too gentle to defend itself. Only a few observers noticed the truth on the human colony of New Eden. An elderly Valori scholar named Tethran had lived among humans for 60 years. He had studied their history and learned their languages and watched them raise their children. He understood something that most of the galaxy had missed. "You are all fools," he wrote in a message to his government that was promptly ignored. "The humans are not weak. They are patient. There is a difference that you cannot comprehend. A wolf that chooses not to bite is still a wolf, and when you push it far enough, it will remind you of its teeth." Ambassador Vasquez stood before the Galactic Council one final time after the 5th major Vraxith raid. Her face was calm and her voice was steady, but those who looked closely could see something new in her eyes. Something cold and hard and ancient. "I come before this council not to beg for justice," she said, her words echoing through the great chamber. "I come to deliver a warning. Humanity has shown patience because we chose to be patient. We have shown mercy because we value mercy. We have avoided war because we know better than anyone what war truly costs." She paused and looked at each delegate in turn. "But our patience is a gift, not a guarantee. It is something we offer freely, but it can be taken away. The Vraxith believe we are weak because we have not responded to their attacks with violence. They are wrong. We are not weak. We are simply giving them every chance to stop before we are forced to show them what we truly are." The chamber filled with laughter. The delegates found her warning amusing. This small human woman threatening the mighty Vraxith Dominion was the funniest thing they had heard in years. Ambassador Vasquez did not smile. She simply gathered her documents and walked toward the exit. At the door, she stopped and spoke one final sentence without turning around. "Remember this moment. Remember that we warned you. Remember that we gave everyone the chance to choose peace." Then she was gone, and the laughter continued. And no one understood that they had just witnessed the last moment of the galaxy. They knew everything was about to change. New Helsinki was a world of golden wheat fields and quiet. The villages and children who had never known war. The colony had been established 80 years ago by settlers who wanted nothing more than to farm the rich soil and raise their families. Under the light of a gentle sun, they had no military bases. They had no weapons factories. They had no strategic value whatsoever. Their population was 4.2 million souls. Farmers and teachers and doctors and shopkeepers. Grandparents who told stories by the fire, and babies who were just learning to walk. Ordinary people living ordinary lives on a world that had never harmed anyone. Warlord Kethrak chose this world, specifically because of its innocence. The humans respond to our raids with words and complaints, he told his war council as they planned the attack. They protect their military installations and move their valuable assets, but they leave their weak and helpless exposed. This tells us everything we need to know about their true nature. His officers nodded in agreement. The humans were clearly cowards who valued their own safety above their people. Striking an undefended colony would prove this to the entire galaxy. "We will not simply raid this world," Kethrak continued, his scarred face twisting into a cruel smile. "We will destroy it utterly. We will broadcast our attack across all frequencies so that every species can watch. The humans will see their weakness exposed, and they will finally understand that the Vraxith Dominion cannot be challenged." The fleet that jumped into New Helsinki's system was the largest the Vraxith had ever assembled for a single target. 200 warships surrounded the peaceful blue and gold world like predators, circling a wounded animal. The colonists saw the ships appear in their sky and immediately sent distress calls to Earth and every human world within range. They begged for help. They pleaded for someone to save them. They gathered their children and prayed to whatever gods they believed in help could reach them in time. The nearest human fleet was 3 days away at maximum speed. Warlord Kethrak did not bother with ground troops or orbital bombardment. Such methods were too slow and too merciful for his purposes. Instead, he ordered his ships to deploy a bioweapon that the Vraxith had developed centuries ago and had never dared to use against a Concord species. The canisters fell through the atmosphere. Like silver rain, the people of New Helsinki had 3 hours. The bioweapon attacked the nervous system first. Victims felt a tingling sensation that spread from their extremities to their core. Then came the paralysis. Then came the pain. Then came death. Parents held their children and watched them die. Lovers clutched each other as their bodies failed. Elderly couples who had spent 50 years together took their final breaths side by side in the capital city of Suomi. A teacher named Maria Korhanen gathered her students in the school basement and told them stories to keep them calm as the end approached. She held the youngest ones in her arms and sang songs her grandmother had taught her until her voice gave out and her heart stopped beating. In a small farming village, a man named Eric Lindquist spent his final minutes recording a message for his brother on Earth. His hands trembled as he held the device, and his words came out broken and afraid. But he wanted someone to know that he had lived, and that he had loved his family, and that he was not ready to die. 4.2 million people. Every single one of them with dreams and fears and memories and hopes for the future. Every single one of them innocent of any crime. Every single one of them dead within 3 hours. Warlord Kethrak broadcast a message as the last life signs on the planet faded to nothing. "Let this be remembered," he declared, his voice booming across every communication channel in the galaxy. The humans thought they could hide behind diplomacy and weakness. They were wrong. Humanity bends or humanity breaks. There is no other choice. The message reached Earth at precisely 1400 hours. Greenwich Mean Time that was received simultaneously by every government building, every military installation, every civilian home, and every human ship in the galaxy. For 17 seconds, the entire human species watched in absolute silence as the images played across their screens. Children lying dead in schoolyards. Families frozen in their final embrace. Streets filled with bodies that would never move again. A world that had been alive and vibrant and full of hope. Now transformed into a graveyard, the silence stretched on then Fleet Admiral James Okonkwo, a man who had served humanity for 40 years and who was known throughout the military as the calmest and most measured commander in human history, stood up from his chair in the command center of Earth Defense Command. His hands were steady. His voice did not shake. But those who saw his eyes in that moment would never forget what they witnessed. Something ancient and terrible had awakened behind them. He gave a single order on an open channel that every species in the galaxy could hear. Activate the Lazarus contingency. May God forgive us for what comes next. Across human space, things began to change on every human world. Ambassadors and diplomats received the same coded message and began quietly packing their belongings. They said polite goodbyes to their alien colleagues and boarded ships bound for human territory. They did not explain why they were leaving. They simply smiled and said that they had been called home. Human trade ships that had been scattered across the galaxy suddenly changed course. They abandoned profitable routes and valuable cargo and set coordinates for protected space. Within hours, human vessels were streaming away from alien territory like water draining from a sink. Alien governments watched these movements with confusion. What were the humans doing? Were they fleeing in fear? Were they admitting defeat? Surely this mass retreat meant that Kethrak had been right about human weakness. Only the oldest and wisest observers understood the truth. The humans were not running away. They were clearing the field. Ambassador Vasquez sent one final message to the Galactic Council before her ship entered human space. It contained only 4 words that would haunt the delegates for the rest of their lives. We warned you all, deep within human territory, in asteroid fields and hidden shipyards that the galaxy did not know existed, ancient machines roared to life for the first time in 200 years. Weapons that humanity had sworn they had destroyed were pulled from vaults and mounted on hulls. Soldiers who had retired decades ago received messages calling them back to service. The humans had buried their fury, not destroyed it. They had chosen peace, but they had never forgotten war, and now, for the first time in 2 centuries, humanity remembered what it truly was. 1 week passed after the massacre of New Helsinki, and the galaxy held its breath without knowing why human space had gone completely dark. Number communications came out. No signals went in. The borders that had once been open to trade and travel were now sealed tight, and any ship that approached too closely was turned away by automated warning systems. Alien governments sent messages demanding explanations. They received no response. They sent diplomats to seek audiences with human leaders. The diplomats were politely informed that no meetings would be granted at this time. They sent spy ships to gather intelligence. The spy ships simply vanished, and no one knew what happened to them. For the first time in 200 years, humanity had nothing to say to the rest of the galaxy. And the silence was more terrifying than any threat could have been. Warlord Kethrak laughed when his advisors expressed concern about the human withdrawal. He saw it as final proof of his victory. The humans were hiding in shame and fear, licking their wounds and accepting their defeat. Soon they would emerge to beg for mercy, and he would grant them none. "They are broken," he declared to anyone who would listen. "I have shown the galaxy what humans truly are, and now everyone knows that they are prey, not predators. Our dominion will be remembered forever as the empire that humbled humanity." Not everyone shared his confidence. The Velori diplomat Tethran, who had lived among humans for 60 years, tried desperately to warn anyone who would listen. He sent messages to governments across the galaxy. He published articles explaining what he believed was coming. He begged the Galactic Council to intervene before it was too late. No one listened to him. He was just an old scholar who had spent too much time with the strange humans. Surely he had lost his objectivity. Then Ambassador Elena Vasquez returned. She arrived at the Galactic Council without announcement, walking into the great chamber during a routine session as if she had never left. Her human guards stood at attention behind her, their faces blank and unreadable. In her hands she carried a small electronic tablet and nothing else. The council fell silent as she approached the speaker's platform. There was something different about her now, something that made even the most arrogant delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. Her eyes held a coldness that had never been there before, and her voice when she spoke was like ice cracking on a frozen lake. "I am here to deliver humanity's final diplomatic communication to this council," she said, and her words echoed through the chamber like a funeral bell. "After today, there will be no more negotiations. There will be no more discussions. There will only be consequences." She activated the tablet and began to read names. Anna Korhanen, age 7. Marcus Lindquist, age 4. Sophia Chun, age 9. David Nakamura, age 3. Emma Vertman, age 6. The names continued. They were the children of New Helsinki, every single human being under the age of 10 who had died in Kethrak's attack. There were thousands upon thousands of them, and Vasquez read each name clearly and slowly. The delegates began to grow restless after the first hour. They whispered to each other and shifted in their seats. Some tried to leave. but the human guards blocked the exits with polite smiles and firm hands. "You will stay," Vasquez said without looking up from her tablet. "You ignored our pleas for justice when our people were being killed. You dismissed our concerns as frontier skirmishes. You laughed at our warnings. Now you will listen to what your inaction cost us." The reading continued for 4 hours when she finally finished. The chamber was utterly silent. Some delegates were weeping. Others stared at the floor in shame. Even the most hostile species representatives could not meet her eyes. Vasquez set the tablet down and looked at the council with an expression that none of them would ever forget. "For 200 years, we showed you who we wanted to be," she said. "We built schools and hospitals instead of weapons. We trained doctors and teachers instead of soldiers. We believed that we could become something better than what our history made us. We hoped, truly and desperately hoped, that we had evolved beyond our nature." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was harder than steel. "You have proven us wrong. You have shown us that the galaxy respects only force. You have taught us that mercy is seen as weakness and patience is seen as cowardice. Most importantly, you have reminded us of something we tried very hard to forget." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a toy, a stuffed animal that had been recovered from the ashes of a destroyed schoolhouse. It was burned and broken, but anyone could see that it had once been a child's beloved companion. She placed it on the council table and stepped back. "We did not forget our wars," she said quietly. "We did not forget our fury. We simply chose to bury it, for your sake and for ours. You have made us remember. You have made us dig up what we buried. And now you will see what lies beneath the peaceful face we showed you." With that, she turned and walked toward the exit at the door. She stopped and spoke her final words to the Galactic Council. "The Vraxith Dominion has 72 hours to surrender every individual responsible for New Helsinki. After that, we will come for them ourselves. Anyone who stands in our way will be treated as an enemy of humanity. There will be no second warning. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy for those who showed our children none." Then she was gone, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Emergency messages flew between governments. Military forces were put on high alert. Intelligence agencies scrambled to learn what the humans were planning. Vraxith scouts reported something impossible. The human fleet had somehow tripled in size in a single week. Where there had been hundreds of ships, there were now thousands. The vessels were larger and more heavily armed than anything humans had ever fielded before. And they were moving toward Vraxith space with terrible purpose. Warlord Kethrak received these reports and dismissed them as propaganda. The humans were bluffing. They did not have such forces. They were trying to frighten him into surrender with lies and exaggerations. He was still laughing at the foolish human tricks when his communications officer interrupted him with a trembling voice. "Warlord, we have confirmed contacts entering the home system. It is the human fleet. They are here." Kethrak looked out the viewport of his command ship and saw the stars, themselves disappearing as massive shadows blocked out the light. The human dreadnoughts were arriving, and there were more of them than he could count. For the first time in his long and bloody life, Warlord Kethrak felt something he had never experienced before. He felt afraid. The Battle of Vraxith Prime lasted 11 minutes, and it changed the galaxy forever. Warlord Kethrak had assembled the largest defensive fleet in the history of the Vraxith Dominion. 800 warships surrounded the homeworld in overlapping formations, designed by the greatest military minds of his species. The planetary defense grid was considered the most advanced in the known galaxy. Capable of destroying entire armadas before they could reach orbit, it did not matter. Human fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, moving with a precision that seemed almost mechanical. There was no communication, no demands for surrender, no dramatic speeches. There was only silence and the cold glow of weapons charging. Admiral James Okonkwo sat in the command chair of the dreadnought Remembrance and watched the tactical display with an expression of stone. Beside him, his officers worked their stations with grim efficiency. No one spoke unless necessary. No one smiled. No one hesitated. All ships, Okonkwo said quietly, begin the operation. The Raxith opened fire first, launching everything they had at the approaching human vessels. Missiles streaked through space by the thousands. Energy beams lanced out from orbital platforms. Fighter craft swarmed toward the enemy like angry insects. The humans did not slow down. They did not take evasive action. They simply raised their shields and kept coming. The Raxith weapons hit their targets and did almost nothing. The human shields absorbed fire that should have torn through them like paper. The human armor shrugged off impacts that should have been devastating. It was as if the Raxith were throwing pebbles at mountains. Then the humans fired back. The first volley destroyed 200 Raxith ships in a single instant. Weapons that no species had ever seen before tore through shields and armor as if they did not exist. Raxith cruisers that had survived 100 battles simply ceased to exist, replaced by expanding clouds of debris and dying fire. The second volley killed 300 more. Kathrak screamed orders into his communication system. But there was nothing his forces could do. They fired and fired and fired, and their weapons accomplished nothing. The humans kept coming, kept killing, kept advancing with the terrible patience of a natural disaster. In 3 minutes, the planetary defense grid was gone. The orbital platforms that had taken centuries to build were reduced to rubble. The fighter squadrons that had launched with such confidence were scattered atoms drifting in the void in 7 minutes. The Raxith fleet had lost 500 ships and had destroyed exactly 0 human vessels. Kathrak watched his display fill with red icons, marking destroyed allies, and felt his confidence turn to ash in his mouth. In 11 minutes, it was over. The last Raxith warship exploded in a flash of light, and the human fleet held position above the defenseless homeworld, and then they stopped. The guns fell silent. The ships held their fire. The humans made no move to bombard the planet below, where billions of Raxith civilians cowered in terror. Waiting for death to fall from the sky, Admiral Okonkwo's voice broadcast across every frequency, reaching not just Raxith Prime, but every world in the Dominion and beyond. "We are not you," he said, and his voice was calm and clear and utterly without mercy. "Your children did not order the attack on New Helsinki. Your farmers and teachers and shopkeepers did not deploy the bioweapon. They will not be punished for the crimes of their leaders." He paused, and when he spoke again, his words carried a weight that made even his own officers shiver. "But your military, your government, and every individual who ordered, planned, or celebrated the massacre of our people, they belong to us now. We are coming for them. We will find them, and we will deliver the justice that the Galactic Council refused to provide." What followed was not a war in any traditional sense. It was a hunt. Human special forces deployed across Raxith space in ships that moved like ghosts. They bypassed planetary defenses that should have detected them. They infiltrated bases that should have been impenetrable. They moved through the Dominion like shadows with purpose. One by one, the architects of the genocide were found. Admiral Vexenar, who had commanded the fleet that attacked New Helsinki, was captured in his private estate. He was dragged before a human tribunal, where evidence of his crimes was presented with cold precision. He was found guilty and executed within the hour. General Krathos, who had developed the bioweapon, was discovered hiding in an underground bunker. He chose to fight rather than surrender. The Special Forces team that found him granted his wish for a warrior's death, though it took less than 30 seconds. The Minister of War, who had signed the orders, the intelligence officers who had selected the target, the logistics commanders who had supplied the fleet, One by one, they were found and they were taken and they were judged. Some surrendered peacefully and were given trials. The humans were scrupulously fair, presenting evidence and allowing defense arguments. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the verdicts were inevitable. Others resisted and died. The humans gave them one chance to surrender, and if that chance was refused, they did not give another warlord. Kethrak fled the homeworld before the human forces could reach him. He ran to a hidden bunker on a remote moon that only his most trusted advisors knew about. He was certain that he could hide there until the humans gave up their search. It was wrong 6 days after the Battle of Raxith Prime. A human strike team found him cowering in a reinforced chamber deep beneath the moon's surface. They cut through doors that were supposed to be impenetrable. They disabled security systems that were supposed to be unhackable. They moved through his defenses like they were not even there. Kethrak fought back with every weapon at his disposal. He killed 3 humans before they overwhelmed him and dragged him into the Light. Admiral Okonkwo came personally to witness the final judgment. He stood before the warlord who had murdered millions of innocent people and looked into his eyes without hatred or satisfaction or any emotion at all. "You thought we were weak because we chose peace," Okonkwo said quietly. "You thought our mercy was cowardice. You were wrong. We buried our fury because we feared what it could do. We hid our weapons because we knew how terrible they were. We chose to be kind because we understood, better than anyone, what cruelty truly costs." He raised his sidearm and aimed it at Kethrak's head. "You made us remember. This is what we truly are. And this is what happens to those who harm our children." The execution was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species watched as Warlord Kethrak, the conqueror who had laughed at human weakness, died at the hands of the species he had underestimated. The Vraxith Dominion, which had stood for thousands of years as one of the great military powers of the galaxy, was broken in 3 weeks. Its military was destroyed. Its government was dismantled. Its leaders were dead or imprisoned, and the humans had barely broken a sweat across the galaxy. Governments watched in stunned silence as the true face of humanity was revealed. These were not the patient diplomats and gentle healers they had known for 2 centuries. These were the descendants of warriors who had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars. These were the children of a death world who had chosen peace because they wanted it, not because they needed it. The humans could have conquered the galaxy at any time. They simply had not wanted to until now. No one had given them a reason. 1 year passed after the fall of the Vraxith Dominion, and the galaxy learned to live with a new reality. The humans had returned to their peaceful ways, almost immediately after the last war criminal was brought to justice. Their trade ships resumed their routes. Their diplomats returned to their posts. Their doctors and teachers once again traveled to worlds in need on the surface. Nothing had changed. The humans smiled and negotiated and offered aid just as they had before. They settled disputes with patience and helped struggling civilizations with generous hands. They were kind and warm and gentle, exactly as they had always been. But everything had changed, and everyone knew it. The other species looked at humanity differently now. When human diplomats entered a room, conversations fell silent. When human ships passed through a system, other vessels gave them wide berth. When humans made requests, those requests were granted quickly and without argument. This was not because the humans demanded special treatment. They did not. They asked for nothing they had not asked for before. They behaved with the same humility and kindness they had always shown. The difference was in how the other species responded. They had seen the truth. They had watched the Vraxith Dominion, one of the oldest and most powerful military forces in the galaxy, destroyed in 3 weeks by a species that had been holding back for 2 centuries. They had learned that the gentle humans were not gentle because they had to be, but because they chose to be, and choices could change the galactic Council created a new holiday called the Remembrance of New Helsinki. It was observed across hundreds of worlds by thousands of species. On that day, beings throughout the galaxy paused to remember the 4.2 million humans who had died, and to remember what their deaths had awakened. Some species observed the holiday out of genuine respect for the fallen. Others observed it out of fear. Most observed it for both reasons. The humans appreciated the gesture, but did not dwell on it. They had their own ways of remembering, private and personal, and not meant for outsiders to understand on the anniversary of the massacre. Human families across the galaxy gathered in their homes and spoke the names of those who had been lost. They shared stories of human history, of all the wars their ancestors had survived and all the enemies they had overcome. They reminded their children that strength and kindness were not opposites, that the ability to destroy and the choice to build could exist in the same heart, and they reminded them of the line that must never be crossed. Ambassador Elena Vasquez returned to the Galactic Council one final time before her retirement. She was old now, her hair white and her face lined with years of service to her species and to peace. But her eyes were still sharp, and her voice was still strong. The chamber was packed with delegates from every species in the Concord. They had come to hear her final address, knowing that whatever she said would be remembered for generations. Among them sat a young Vraxith delegate named Vethril. He represented the new civilian government that had risen from the ashes of the Dominion, a government that the humans had helped establish. His presence was controversial, but the humans had insisted that the Vraxith people deserved a voice in the galaxy. They would help to build. Vasquez looked out at the assembled delegates and smiled. It was a warm smile, genuine and kind, but there was something ancient behind it that made even the bravest warriors look away. I have served humanity for more than 60 years, she began, her voice carrying easily through the silent chamber. In that time, I have worked to build bridges between species and to prevent conflicts before they could begin. I have believed, and I still believe, that peace is the greatest achievement any civilization can aspire to. She paused and let her gaze sweep across the room. But I have also learned that peace has a price. It requires constant vigilance and eternal patience. It demands that we forgive injuries and overlook insults and extend mercy even when mercy is not deserved. Peace is not the absence of the capacity for war. It is the choice to pursue something better despite that capacity. Her eyes found the young Vraxith delegate, and she nodded to him with what seemed like genuine respect. The Vraxith people did not attack New Helsinki. Their warlords did. Their military did. Their government did. The ordinary citizens who wanted only to live their lives bear no guilt for what was done in their name. This is why we did not punish them. This is why we helped them build a new government. This is why we welcomed them back into the galactic community. Vethril bowed his head in acknowledgement, and Vasquez continued, but we will never forget what happened. We cannot forget. The 4.2 million souls who died on New Helsinki demand that we remember. Our children demand that we remember. The future demands that we remember. She straightened her shoulders and spoke with a clarity that cut through the chamber like a blade. So let me tell you what humanity learned from New Helsinki, and let my words serve as our legacy to this council and to every species in the galaxy. The chamber was absolutely silent. Not a single being dared to move or speak. We learned that our patience can end. We learned that our mercy has limits. We learned that the fury we buried 200 years ago is still alive, still waiting, still ready to rise if it is ever needed again. She took a deep breath. We do not want war. We have never wanted war. We will do everything in our power to avoid war. But if anyone threatens our people, if anyone harms our children, if anyone crosses the line that cannot be crossed, then we will respond with all the terrible strength our species possesses. Her voice softened, but somehow became even more powerful. We are the descendants of survivors. We are the children of those who walked through fire and refused to die. We carry within us the memory of every war our ancestors fought and every enemy they defeated. This is not something we are proud of. It is simply what we are. She smiled one last time, and in that smile was both warmth and warning. Treat us with kindness, and we will be the best friends you have ever known. Work with us in peace, and we will help you build wonders beyond imagination. But harm our families, threaten our children, and you will face something that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bargained with, and cannot be stopped. She gathered her documents and walked toward the exit, just as she had 1 year ago. But this time, no one laughed. This time, every delegate rose to their feet in silent respect at the door. She turned and spoke her final words as humanity's ambassador. Remember what we showed you. Remember both our kindness and our fury. And teach your children to remember as well. That is all we ask. Centuries later, when young aliens asked their elders why humanity was treated with such respect, why even the mightiest empires spoke carefully around human diplomats, the elders would share the story of New Helsinki and the Fury. It awakened, they would describe the patient giants who chose peace for 200 years and the terrible storm that arose when their patience was betrayed, and they would always end with the same words, spoken softly and with absolute conviction, because we remember. All of us remember, and we will never forget. The galaxy had learned its lesson while humanity hoped it would never need to teach it again.